as I was saying, the antitrust policy is at the bottom of this slide. If you are not familiar with it, please take a quick read now. I will pause for 15 seconds, but it is an important policy that we uphold within CABAF. So today we will walk you through CABAF's ESG approach, what it means for you, our members, and most importantly, how you can start applying it practically in your own organizations. The purpose of today really is to keep this focused, to keep it actionable. This isn't going to be about theory. It's about what you can realistically do over the next 12 to 24 months. I will then hand over to my fellow ESG committee member, Juliet Robertson, who will introduce our special guest for a Q&A session on what's hot in the ESG or sustainability space today. So for those that are still unsure, there may be some of you out there that are still unsure, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. But importantly, it's not three separate pillars. It's about how your business manages environmental impact, how your business supports its people and your communities, and how your business operates with clear and ethical governance. For our sector, so for the logistics and supply chain sector, customs broker, freight forwarders, ESG is quickly becoming an expectation from our customers. So our customers expect you as our members to have an ESG strategy in place. It is also becoming more and more important and is being used as a requirement when procuring freight logistics services. And increasingly, we're seeing that it is really a license to operate. CABAF's role here is to simplify ESG so that members can take practical steps without overcomplicating what may seem a complicated topic. So the vision that we have from CABAF is up here. I'm not going to simply read out the vision statement. I will allow you to do that as I talk. But the vision statement for CABAF linked to ESG is deliberately grounded in the context of New Zealand. There are three key ideas here. The first one is being responsible and resilient. So this is not about being perfect, but this is about how do we continue to steadily improve what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. The second key point here is about a balanced focus. So the balanced focus is in and around, obviously, the environment, in and around the people, and also importantly that a lot of people do not necessarily focus on is the governance of the overarching ESG concepts. And the third piece or message within the vision statement here is that it's aligned to Aotearoa New Zealand's values. So this is about how we operate locally, not necessarily importing offshore frameworks without due consideration. So really the key takeaway here is ESG isn't a compliance exercise. It's about building stronger, more resilient business over time. So within the CABAF strategy, we then break it down into high-level goals from a organizational perspective. So I'll break this slide down into two parts. So the environmental piece. So this is about, and again, I will say here that CABAF are intentionally making this and keeping this simple as well. So from an environmental perspective, it's about starting by measuring emissions. So that you can't manage what you don't measure. So as CABAF, we will start managing our own emissions, and we'll start making that available to our members. What we will do as a federation, as an organization as well, is focus on efficiency and waste reduction. We feel that this is obviously a quick win from a CABAF perspective, and as an industry, we're moving into a paperless environment, and that's very, very similar to the way that we are moving in as a council and as an organisation. And from the environmental piece as well, we're focusing on doing one improvement per year. So this is about momentum. This isn't necessarily about perfection. So we will be conducting a small annual waste audit in the first year. On the social side, this we feel is often underestimated, but it's equally as important. And I think that's important to understand. The E, the S, the G, they're of equal importance. So health and safety remains foundational. So that is important that we, as a federation, do align with the Health and Safety at Work Act. DEI and engagement. So we see that this is critical for attracting and retaining council members, but also attracting and retaining members such as the CEO and the admin functions within CABAF. And we put a huge focus on that, linking that in with Generation Future, in making sure that CABAF are leading the way, particularly when we're going out talking to the next generation of transport and logistics individuals. And then the last piece from a social perspective is the community connection. So this is around creating or delivering on one initiative per year. So this is about building credibility. And just as a reminder, last year, we'll be doing the same this year as well. As a result of conference last year, we planted 813 trees for Trees That Count. And that will result in an overall removal of 180,000 or 180 tons of CO2 over the next 50 years. And that's something that we'll continue to do year on year. And obviously, we welcome the input from our members as well in terms of the community or local partnership initiatives that we want to do. So again, the theme here, small, consistent actions rather than big, complex programs that we will be driving from a CABAF perspective. And last but not least, in terms of what we want to deliver from ESG goals, so governance is where ESG becomes embedded in how we run CABAF, but also how you run your businesses. So we've got three focus areas here. So the code of conduct and the supplier policies. So it's about setting internally and externally. This is about integrating the ESG risk. So start thinking about it from a risk lens, and that's something as from a council perspective we've started building into our meetings. And what we're going to start doing is we're going to start creating some basic sustainability reporting. So keeping it simple, using a starter framework as I'll outline in terms of some of the resources that we have here. So really from a governance, we're using it as how do we make ESG part of the normal business decision making that we make within CABAF. So this is really where we support you as members. So we've developed starter packs that strip ESG back to basics. So really, what does that mean? That means it will enlighten our members as to, quite simply, what does ESG stand for? What is ESG? How do we feel that you could start building a simple starter strategy within your organization? And also what we've got is we've got practical guides for each pillar. So under E, under S, under G, we've got practical guides with appendices, with links and documentation that you can see and that you can use on a day-to-day basis. And I think most importantly as well is these are designed for SMEs. They are not necessarily designed for large corporates that potentially have global programs in place that are pushed down from corporate offices wherever they may be in the world. So these are really designed for the majority, the bulk of our members that operate within an SME. I'm just going to come out of the presentation now, and I'm just going to go into the CABAF webpage just to show you where the resources are held. So just bear with me one second, just while I do that. Okay, so everybody can, it's on a separate screen, hence why I'm looking over there as well. So these resources can be found on the CABAF homepage. This is the CABAF homepage, and you simply navigate to the ESG tab at the top. And then this brings you into our new landing page from an environmental, social and governance perspective. At the top, what you'll see our vision statement, and you will also see here there is a link, a direct link to our KBAF strategy. This piece has already been there. I'm going to come back to the Kakariki Award later. But if you scroll down in this section here, this is really where the resources are for you as members. So what you'll see here on the left-hand side really is kind of the menu. So what we've created here is, what does ESG stand for? So if you do have champions, or you do have young talent or talent within the organization that wants to know more and understand a little bit more about ESG, then these would be great resources for you to point them in this direction. And also, if you want to use this as an educational topic for people within your organization, well, I don't really know what the G or the S stands for within ESG. How can I find out more? This is where you can go. What we also have here as well, and what we've created is a document that is a starter strategy. So if you're thinking that putting a strategy in place for ESG is of low importance today, I think our special guest later on will kind of highlight how important it is that you do actually start on your journey of creating a strategy within your organization. What you can do, you can find here a starter document. So you have the ability to simply go and print that document, and then you can go and take that back into your business and edit it as you see fit. But very much what it talks to here is the real kind of like high level, simple things that you can start to do to build that strategy within your organization. What we've got here is then where it goes into a little bit more detail. So we have the ESG starter pack, and I'm just going to focus in on one right now. I'm not going to go through all of them. You will be able to go through and see the links yourself and use the information. But what we've got here is a starter pack for the environment. So really here, from an environment perspective, you will see that you can see that there are 6 areas that KBAF suggests that you look into. So by clicking into one of the appendices, so the top one is measure your greenhouse gas footprint. So the question would be, well, how do I start doing that? How do I start really looking into that, and what tools are out there for that? What we've created simply is the appendix, which has the more detail for the starter pack. So you will see it opens it up in a PDF document. And what we've got here is we've got the opportunities to have a look at your top 3 emission sources. So looking at the categories, how do you scope those out? How do you reduce emissions? What are some of the tools that we can that you can use to measure? So we've got tools that take you directly into carbon care, directly into eco-transit, that can help you start to build that simple calculation of your emissions as well. Again, very, very similar to what we've got from a social perspective. So if you haven't currently today got a DE&I program running within your organization, again, within the Appendix C here, what this will do is it will help you understand how can you kick that conversation off within your organization, and some kind of like tips and tricks as to what you need to do to delve a little bit deeper into that. So we also as well point you in the direction of ECA, which is a Crown agency. The purpose of this Crown agency is to mobilise New Zealanders to be the world leaders in clean and clever energy use. But also there are opportunities and tips and tricks in here on businesses, how you can potentially get subsidies to help with any investment that you want to make within the ESG space. So I think for me, if you take one thing from my section of today, is really start with these resources, okay? Don't overcomplicate things. Go through the resources that we've put up here that are available for all members. Take 1, 2, 3. I mean, there's this thing, just do one thing. And then once you've done that one thing, do another thing, but kick things off within the organization. And I urge you to find those talents or those individuals within your organization that do have a flair for sustainability, ESG equals sustainability, and bring them along that journey and help them kind of like curate and craft that strategy for you. I will now hand over to Juliet Robertson, who's from TNL, who with her previous experience from Toitu, has been helping shape this for our members, and she will lead the Q&A with our special guests. So Juliet, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Kia ora koutou. Thanks everyone for being here today, tuning into our webinar. Exciting to get to introduce our special guest today, who is Nick Morrison from Go Well Consulting. I've got a few questions that I'm going to run through, but if anyone has questions that have popped up for them or that come up during the start of the Q&A, just put them in the chat and I'll keep an eye on that as we go through. So Nick, thanks so much for being here with us today. If you want to give a wee intro to yourself before we kick off, that'd be great.
Thanks, Juliet. Yeah, kia ora koutou. Ko Nick Morrison aho. I'm Nick Morrison. I founded Go Well Consulting 9 years ago now. We are a sustainability consultancy or ESG consultancy, just to pick up on Simon's point. Before, I used both terms, ESG and sustainability very much mean the same to me. So yeah, we're a sustainability ESG consultancy, and we specialize in helping businesses strategize, communicate, engage, and yeah, really just get on this journey, right? We'll probably get into this, Juliet, but there's a massive big change happening to our economy globally, whether you like it or not, and we're really seeing that at the moment, right, with the fuel crisis. But there's lots of other crises and issues for businesses to be aware of, and there's a lot of change happening, and we help businesses on understand that and take them on that journey.
Awesome, thank you. So first question for you here, at a global level, what are some trends we're seeing in ESG for businesses at the moment? And are there any new regulations or consumer expectations that are driving those trends?
Yeah, great first question. I think the honest answer is it's a pretty mixed picture. We're all probably pretty up to speed with what's happening at a political level, both globally and locally. But, you know, you compare, say, what's happening in the EU, and they are driving a lot of ESG policy and regulation that's coming out of their circular economy strategy that they've got for the whole block, which won't surprise you to hear that I'm very supportive of, and really want to see New Zealand have something similar. But then you look across the Atlantic, say at the US, and there's so much regulation being repealed there, and that's definitely at that national level there. There's a lot happening at a state level where it's more progressive and stuff. So it makes it a bit difficult, I guess, for your members and for New Zealand businesses and exporters, because there is quite a variation across the planet, and that's probably the two extremes that I just gave. And there's, you know, other markets sit in between those two extremes probably. So from maybe a bit specifically from the EU, there's things coming around the no forestry, so businesses having to, or no deforestation, I should say, so businesses having to look at and prove that their products are not coming from areas that have been recently deforested. There's the carbon adjustment, border adjustment regulation, so having to add on a fee basically for carbon that's been for products made outside of the EU. There's regulation around supply chains and modern slavery requirements. So yeah, there's a lot out there, Juliet, and it's a big one to cover in this session. But I guess my probably summarising comment would be for your members to get an understanding of what's going on, and there's lots of good resources out there to help, and yeah, just get a bit of an understanding of the picture that's happening, because it is complex, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, even just then you listed about 20 different regulations, so it can definitely be overwhelming, but that's why I guess starting on the journey at all is important, because yeah, the earlier you start, the less behind you're going to feel. For New Zealand businesses in particular, what areas of ESG are they jumping on first? So where's the opportunity, both like the low-hanging fruit or the big changes?
Yeah, it is dependent industry by industry and business by business, and in this kind of work we do, we help businesses sort of understand within their own budgets and their own capacity and capabilities of who's on their team and all these kind of things, where really should they start. So I guess I would say that caveat, but definitely that emissions piece, climate change is getting worse. It's going to get worse before it gets better, because we continue to put greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That traps heat, and that causes our climate to change, and we've been seeing the impacts of that pretty brutally in New Zealand over the last couple of months or so. So that's not going to go away, and pressure on businesses to get on with decarbonising and getting off fossil fuels and stopping the emissions of greenhouse gases in the first place is really a big one, and probably a pretty good place to start. And I think, just to Simon's intro and the resources that CABAF have pulled together, fantastic. It doesn't need to be really complex. Emissions mapping can be very complex, and there's some very nuanced parts of it, but for the most part, just get those basics going: your fuel, your electricity, your waste, those kind of key things, and get a bit of a picture is a really good place to start, Juliet, and a good low-hanging fruit. You can kind of look at waste separately rather than from the emissions impact of it, but just literally what materials are you sending to a hole in the ground and into a landfill, right? And how can you reduce that? That's another really great place to start. And then on that social side of things, like, what are you doing to look after your people? There's so much benefit from having people who work in your organization who are engaged, who are healthy, who are motivated, who are of good, I guess, got that resilience and are mentally in a good place as well. So all those things around well-being and looking after your people is pretty low-hanging fruit as well.
Yeah, nice. My background is from that emissions management side, so I understand what you're saying is that if you really simplify it down, taking, stock of your emissions can be an easy job. People can be worried about trying to get it completely perfect, but if you just get started with one of the tools, it can be, a week or two, a little bit of effort activity, and then you've got an emissions baseline to work from, which is a really great starting point.
100%.
For freight companies taking on ESG strategies, are you seeing many of those at this stage? And what do you think the next 5 to 10 years might look like for our industry?
Yeah, well, first, to be first upfront, that really we haven't worked with a freight forwarding company yet. I've had some good conversations with Simon, and I know there's a fair bit going on with inside his organisation, but noting that they're a bigger global organisation. But yeah, really, I mean, it's such a critical role that freight companies and freight forwarders, etc., play. Like, we work with a lot of New Zealand exporters and importers, and they rely so much on your members, and they play such a critical role in those value chains. And those businesses that are a bit more advanced in their sustainability or ESG journey and their carbon mapping, they need information from those stakeholders, right, from those parts of their supply chain. So there's a real opportunity for, I guess, members of CABAF and people within your industry to get up to speed with their own knowledge and their own kind of ESG performance, so to speak, and they can engage really meaningfully and really purposefully and with a lot of value to those businesses who are needing that help. We have lots of conversations about what are we going to do about freight. There's nothing more we can do, but there are things that can be done, and there are things that are happening globally. So I think there's a real opportunity for CABAF members and businesses to become more valuable stakeholders and partners of these businesses who are kind of maybe leading the way a bit. That makes sense?
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned tenders and how in procurement processes it's becoming more and more important to have ESG strategies in place. Like you say, at the moment, freight might be an area where they're looking and saying, what can we do? But increasingly, there's going to be more pressure to have the emissions data or be able to track your modern slavery information, and that's all coming, isn't it? That's all in the pipeline.
100%. Yeah, really good point. That's definitely something we're seeing as well with other clients within service offerings and manufacturing businesses we work with. Yeah, those tenders, they're asking those questions, whether it's from government or whether it's from council or whether it's from big multinationals or even local businesses as well. They realizing, and you're just sort of seeing that top-down pressure, I guess. They are realizing that they've done a lot of the stuff in-house to get their own sort of, house in order. And now it's about going down that value chain, and it's about asking their suppliers and their other stakeholders and for what they're doing. And those tenders are a great place to do that, and putting those into the contracts. So we're working with a solar company at the moment, and they are talking about exactly that, about the contracts, the legal contracts with their subcontractors, to get some information around the fuel they're using to help them understand their footprint, because their clients are asking what's the carbon footprint of the solar farm, etc. Right? So that kind of trickle down effect is really is happening. So just reiterates that point again, I think, Julie, of just getting going and getting some knowledge and starting to become more informed and more aware of all the stuff as a freight forwarder or freight business, so that you're prepared for all of that, so you have all the answers for those circumstances.
Yeah, awesome. You mentioned you've had a look at the KBAF resources. What were your kind of thoughts on those? And if you were a KBAF member, just starting out in this area, how would you approach those resources?
Full disclosure, I haven't been paid to say this, but I think they're really, really, really good. I think it's a really great starting point. I think it's a really good understanding from KBAF team around your industry and around the members within your organisation, and that a lot of them are small businesses and don't have the big resources. And so I think these resources have been tailored to them really nicely. And it is, to pick up on Simon's point right at the start, it is about, what do you say, small consistent actions, and just keeping going and keeping moving. They do all add up. And a lot of, I think, what the problem is with businesses who haven't really engaged with ESG meaningfully yet is that uncertainty, is it the unknowing, the fear of the unknown, and feeling a bit overwhelmed. So looking at those resources, I think you've done a really good job of bringing it down to pretty simple starting points and just getting some momentum and getting going. And I guarantee you, like, having taken businesses through this journey dozens and dozens of times, you massively underestimate what you're capable of and the value you get from it until they start going, and then they start to see it, and then they start to build their confidence up. So yeah, look, I think those resources have been designed and pitched exactly the right level for those who are new to the journey, haven't really got started, aren't quite sure where to start.
I'd invite anyone, if they have any burning questions, to pop them in the chat just off to the side. But something on my mind is, it would be good to get an example of a specific initiative in the ESG space to kind of help us make this feel a little bit more real, as opposed to high up strategy that feels a bit intangible. So do you have a favourite initiative that a company has done within ESG that was really successful or was really memorable for another reason?
I'm going to give you one. It's hard to choose favourite, Julia. Obviously, it's a bit like first favourite child, obviously. But one that's jumping to mind, I think probably relates quite well to probably the people who are on this call today, but is a company called RTL, Road Transport Logistics, I think it stands for, but RTL they go by, and they sell road safety equipment. So those big mechanical things you see on the back of trucks on motorways when they're doing all the big signs with the big arrows, but also road cones. They sell road cones, and the road cone is a bit of a national obsession in this country. But they love them or loathe them. We need them. They've got a really important role to play. Whether we have too many of them or not, we'll debate that another day. But they need to be there. And so we started working with RTL 3 or 4 years ago, and took them through what we call our year one program, where we kind of build those foundations around the strategy and what we call materiality assessment. So what should they focus on, all that kind of stuff. Develop them a strategy, and their owner was definitely a bit suspicious, shall we say, about the value of why would they engage in this, and really what would they get out of it. Few years on, the strategy's helped them massively through this kind of downturn to keep the kind of business moving and keep some morale internally as they've gone through this, economic roller coaster that we're all on at the moment. But more specifically, just recently they've launched a recycled cone that they are manufacturing in New Zealand. They're the first company to do that in New Zealand. So they have invested in the equipment to chip down old road cones and remelt those and reshape those and reform those into the base of a road cone. So not the top part, not the cone part of the cone, but the base part, because the cone part of the cone, sorry, I'm not a technical cone person here, but let's just call it the cone part of the cone. There's quite a lot of regulation around the quality of them in terms of how reflective they are and how bright they are, and the recycled material wasn't quite meeting that, so they still use virgin material, virgin plastics for the cone of the cone, but the base is made entirely from recycled cones. And so they call that the Better Cone initiative, and they do a 2-for-1 deal with their customers. So if the customers give them 2 old cones, they will then they need to buy 1 of the new ones back. And so there's a few things to unpick in there. One, I guess it's this circular economy principle of keeping products and materials in circulation or out of landfill. We have got more than enough road cones in this country, but most of them are buried in a hole in the ground or thrown into bushes and places. So we don't need to keep importing more and more. So they're taking this stock that's already there, these resources that are already available, getting them back. They build up these relationships with the subcontractors, especially, who do the jobs of putting the cones out and then getting them back. Just a quick side note, the cones, they have to meet sort of a quality assurance level, like they can't have too much bitumen and stuff on them. But if they pass that, then they can go through their process. And yeah, they make these new road cones without about, I don't know quite what the reduction, I'm going to guess it's about half to maybe 60% less virgin materials, right? Because the base is a pretty thick, heavy part of the cone. And then just the way they took it to market as we need your help with this. We need you. We'll take them back off you, but we need you to commit to buying 1 off us. And they discussed that and played around with how they would do that for quite a while, but that's where they landed at this kind of, hey, we all want the solution, that those who are purchasing the road cones want the solution, those who are complaining about the road cones want the solution. So we've invested in this, but we can't take on all the risk and all the financial cost ourselves. And that's where they landed, and they went to market, and it's proved really, really successful and really popular. It's still early days. They've got the other thing I really love about it is it's a bit of good old Kiwi number 8 wire kind of innovation. Like they had to learn how to recycle, and they had to learn how to make these cones because no one was doing it. And so they've got like this kind of temporary kind of solution to kind of cool them down. I don't understand really the mechanics of it, but they're quite flexible and malleable once they first come out, and they need to cool them down before they put the cone on the base part. And so they've just got these fans that they've probably just bought from a Bunnings, sort of a fan you'd see in your house, like a line of 6 of them on either side blowing over this sort of temporary treadmill type thing just to cool them down. But they've, for myself who works in the space, and that's what we're all about, and we get really excited about as businesses thinking differently, being creative, innovative around how to solve these problems. And now that they've done that and they've worked through, and they've still had some big challenges along the way in getting the machinery and all that kind of stuff and logistics around that, but they've got there, and now they've got the big roading companies are really interested in coming to them because they have their own sustainability and ESG targets, that they need to reduce waste, they need to reduce their emissions, and the road cone is such a poster child for this kind of industry, I guess. And so yeah, it's been a really cool project to be involved with and to see come to life from this kind of early phase of skepticism about the value of ESG, all the way through to, hey, look, now we're attracting and bringing in new clients because of this solution that you've brought to market. So yeah, that's an example, Juliet.
Yeah, that's so cool. And what just pinged in my brain before was when you were saying, it gives other businesses an opportunity to act on their ESG principles. So if they've put an ESG strategy in place and now they've got the opportunity to, I don't know if it's invest a bit more or just make a different procurement choice to get those recycled ones, then that's actually helping their ESG strategy as well. So we're all building together.
Exactly right, 100% right. And you'll know from your time at Toitu, like businesses are looking for ways to reduce emissions, right? And if they have a customer, a supplier come to them and say, oh, we've got the same product, but it's this much less emissions or this much less waste, they were going to go, oh my God, yes, thank you. That's amazing. People are trying to find these solutions, and you're right, we're all in this together. So bringing a solution to the table for your customer is really sought after, I guess.
Yeah. And another thought is that, you're saying that the recycled road cone can't be used into the cone part of the cone in your terminology, but there's probably another kind of plastic that is a higher quality that can be recycled into that. And then also down the line, when we're recycling the recycled cones, there's something they can go to. So it's, again, building that circular economy out just starts with that one link, but getting the resources in circulation is exactly the goal. So it's not just A to B and then we're done. It's how can we continue all the way along the line.
Love that, Julia. I really love that. That's where your head went, and I couldn't agree more. And it's the starting point, and they've cracked the egg, so to speak, which is a bit like, coming back to, for those on this call, like just getting started and just getting something going, and then get that sorted and gain that knowledge, gain that confidence, that capability, and then these other opportunities all of a sudden open up. So yeah, for them, they've got to this baseline, but yeah, you're totally right. Like now they can start thinking about, okay, other recycled content for the cone, or what to do about taking those cones back, other potential business models that might come out of it as well. Who knows? But yeah, that first rung, I guess, of the ladder was the key to get to there. Yeah.
Yeah. We've talked about environmental part of ESG for a little bit now. So lots of us hear sustainability and we're solely thinking about that environmental section. I think that's about, how the word's been marketed over the last 20 years or so. So at what point did those other two areas, social and governance, start fitting under sustainability? And, why is that the case, I suppose?
That's a good question. I can't really answer in terms of when. For me, it always has been. I just always use the classic example of, like someone who doesn't know where their next meal's coming from is not thinking about the emissions of that meal or the plastic packaging of that meal, right? Or a business that is the people are miserable and exploited and don't want to be there, are not thinking about how to innovate and recycle cones, right? So the human and environmental thing is so interlinked, for me anyway, and I think most people come to that realization relatively quickly. But I think you're right, environmental sustainability has kind of been the main pitch and marketing sort of approach over time. But I think, more and more people are starting to really acknowledge that the link between the two and the value to a business of having a sustainable workforce, right? People who stick around, people who grow in their roles, people who bring and build on their knowledge and just take a business forward rather than heaps of turnover and low quality talent and all that kind of stuff. So don't know exactly when it did, but it's definitely, I think, mostly well understood now. And then the governance place probably is, again, just kind of good business, right? Like good businesses know that you can have all the ideas in the world and a great strategy, but if you don't have the governance things in place to make sure someone's accountable, someone delivers on it, you communicate it really clearly, you've got the contracts in place to back it up, then it all falls over. So I think, governance sometimes also covers like the economic or the financial side of things as well. But I think really it's just about general good business practice, right? And whatever your strategy is, whether you're rolling out new IT or a new recruitment strategy or whatever, you've got to have some accountability to it. You've got to have some oversight of it, and you've got to make sure that the right people know about it. A really important thing for ESG is making sure that it's not this little side thing over here, to the business, that senior management or senior decision makers are across it and understand the importance. I'm just going to make this comment as well, so I'll use this opportunity now, as Simon talked about, recruiting internal talent. to give, I totally agree with that. Find the people within an organization who are passionate about this and have got some knowledge around it, but give them agency. It's really important that you support them. Don't just say, oh, Juliet, you worked at Toyota, you can do this whole sustainability strategy, right? Without giving you the time or the space to do it, or without getting the buy-in from your direct report or whoever, or your manager, etc. So it's really, really important that senior leaders and senior decision makers are across this, and they don't need to be experts in it, but they need to understand the basics. They need to, ask good questions, and they need to give the people agency and support within the organization to drive this stuff along, because we've seen it too many times where, it's that, hey, Juliet, you know how to do this stuff, go forth and conquer. And you're like, hey, I need to talk to the head of operations about our car fleet, and that person's just not interested or not listening. Or, hey, I'm trying to get this data from our waste management company, but they're not supplying. Can someone help me? And just no one there to help you, and your enthusiasm and your passion will only get you so far before you kind of burn out and the whole project falls over. So give that agency and that support to that person. And senior leaders, there's a lot on you to step up and embrace the stuff and engage with it and be involved with the journey.
And the support is really key as well, and the documentation, because you don't want it all sitting with one person who's not able to engage with anyone else. If that person moves along, then your ESG efforts are lost in a file somewhere. You want to be able to support that and have it understood across different people within the organisation. Shortly, I'm going to throw back to Simon, but I've just got one more question. Simon's going to discuss the Kakariki Award. So if you, Nick, were to enter Go Well into the Kakariki Award, which is all about putting forward one of your ESG initiatives and highlighting, how the process went, is there one that comes to mind that you would enter?
Okay. I'm going to say it's not that unique. Other businesses do this too, but we operate a 9-day fortnight. So every second Friday we have off, but we stagger it or alternate it. So the business stays open, but we have that extra day off. And it just does so much for your well-being. Just having, everyone loves a 3-day weekend. And we've got quite a strong belief that a lot of our problems is just a lack of time for people. And if people have a little bit more time to do the things they love doing and spend time with the people they love hanging out with, that can solve a lot of our problems. And also people, especially in the private sector, have got so much, such valuable skills and experience that they can donate. If they've got the time to go and give a couple of hours a week to their local school or their local community farm or whatever, that's hugely valuable to the wider economy. So that would be what I'd put in our 9-day fortnight. And I'll just say maybe one more part of it that I think is important, especially for business leaders. It's really valuable, at least for me as a business owner, to step out of the day-to-day, and you're still obviously thinking about work, right? But take that helicopter view and just do that every fortnight and just think about more strategically about how the business is going and how the team are going. I think it's really, really valuable from a senior leader perspective as well. So 9-day fortnight's my application.
Lovely. Yeah, really cool. Thanks again, Nick, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Simon, I'll hand back to you.
Excellent, thank you. And again, Nick, thanks again for coming on. I know obviously it's an investment in your time, but I do think the information related to kind of like what's going on globally, and then kind of like linking it back to what can our organisations do to understand a little bit more about what's happening locally within the sustainability and the ESG space is important. So appreciate the dialogue, and we'll keep that dialogue going between ourselves and Go Well.
Thanks,
so just a couple of things from my side. I'm going to I don't know whether anybody knows the book Just One Thing by Michael Mosley. Bearing in mind the link here is really to the health. So the premise revolves around an idea of making one small change at a time can lead to substantial improvements in your health. And I think for me it kind of like resonates as well from an ESG perspective, right? In terms of making that one small investment or that one small start in your ESG journey will lead to substantial improvements in your overall attractiveness as an organisation out there in the marketplace as well. One thing that we did say that we would do for this particular webinar as well is we are giving away a ticket to conference. So post this call, Sherelle will go out to all of those that have joined this call and let the people know who, or let the person know who was the winner of the free ticket to conference. So just a quick plug for conference as well. Conference this year is down in Christchurch. Juliet is based down in Christchurch, so it's going to be at Tapai. So the big conference venue down in Christchurch. It's from the 22nd to the 24th of September. Early bird tickets are available. They're available until the 31st of July. So if you need to go and speak to your leaders within your organisation, I can see if you could enable people on here, the leaders in your organisation to come and attend the conference, please go and have those conversations and let your leaders know, or those that pay the ticket bill, that the early bird expires the end of July. So last thing from me is what Juliet's last question was alluded to, is the Kakariki Award. So again, this is, I wanted to highlight the Kakariki Award. So what is the Kakariki Award about? So we introduced this back in 2024, and this is obviously linked back into our focus as KBAF on the ESG principles as well. So the Kakariki Award, what is it about? Really, it's about recognising leadership in sustainability. It's about showcasing practical initiatives, and importantly, it's about inspiring other people within the sector. I go back to something I said earlier on. It's not about being perfect. It's about taking those meaningful steps and sharing those learnings. And I think that is a really important part. As KBAF, as a federation, we are a membership organisation, but we are also a community. We are here to support each other as small, medium organisations and large organisations to help people understand what organisations are doing within the E, the S and G space as well. You know, we have also from consultants from outside our industry, such as Nick, that would quite happily start working with organisations within freight forwarding and customs on starting you on that journey as well. So the nominations are now open for the Kakariki Award, and I strongly encourage members to consider applying and let us know what you're doing as part of your ESG journey. That concludes the quarterly review on ESG today. I would like to say a big thank you to Juliet for facilitating the Q&A. A big thank you to Nick for being part of the Q&A. A big thank you to Sherelle and Liz for putting this on for our members. Again, I've dropped the link in the chat. Please go have a look at the resources. Take those small steps. Start your journey. Just do one thing, and I can assure you that your organisation and your customers will benefit as a result of those small investments that you make. I bid you farewell, and I thank everybody for your time today. And I hope to see each and every one of you at conference in September. Thank you.